There are times when life beats the movies. Some stories are so crazy, dark, or just plain evil that it's hard to believe that they are in fact 100% true. This is exactly the case with today's story, which is one of the most heartbreaking and disturbing that I've ever heard in my life. But before we dive in, my name is Georgia and this is my first episode, so thank you for watching. I really appreciate your support and, I would really appreciate your feedback in the comments down below. Now let's jump into our story. The year was 1986 and Tom Hawks, who is the father of two teenage boys freshly divorced, is out at a cookout and he meets this gorgeous woman, this very beautiful young woman, who is 29 years old, and her name is Jackie. So they meet, they hit it off right off the bat. They both are very into fitness and bodybuilding, so they have this common passion, and they seem to be a very good fit for each other. So after just a few years, in 1989, they decide to get married. That is to the happiness of everyone around them, especially his two boys, who by this point are very attached to Jackie. They love her very much and she loves them very much as well. She always wanted to have children of her own, but unfortunately, because of a motorcycle accident that happened a few years before where she also lost her husband, she wasn't able to have any children. So just having the opportunity and being a mother for Tom's two boys makes her a wonderful mother, and she's very happy for this. Jackie was described as down-to-earth and a very kind and nice person, and Tom was described as very kind as well and the life of the party and very handy, just wonderful people in general. Now, by the early 2000s, the boys were grown enough to move to their own houses. So now Tom and Jackie were empty nesters, and even though this came with the sadness that it usually comes, now they were ready to fulfill their dream, and Tom's dream was to retire early and get a boat and just travel across the coast of Mexico. And not only, by no means they were wealthy people, but they were very good with money. They did some very smart investments, they saved a lot, and they were able to afford this. So now they are on the lookout for a boat, and they find this boat which they name Well Deserved, which by no means is a luxury yacht or something like that, but it's exactly what they needed. And Tom is a very handy man, so he just starts equipping this boat with the latest technology, and he's fixing it and he's making it livable for the two of them. So right before Tom's retirement as a probation officer in August 2001, they decide to sell his house and move on this boat, and this is exactly what they do. By October 2002, they are ready for the adventure of their lifetime, and now they are just navigated around the coast of Mexico, around Cabo San Lucas, and stopping in Baja. For the next 1 year and a half, they live out of sea, and they are just fulfilling their dream, and in the meantime, they are in touch with all their family and friends. They have laptop, they have cell phones, so they let them know what adventure they encounter, and they just keep in touch all the time. Now in 2004, they get the news that their first grandchild is on the way, and they are very excited by this news, especially Jackie, who now has the chance to be around a newborn, which is exactly, what she loves. She loved babies very much. So they take the decision to sell their yacht and downgrade, get a smaller boat, and get a house in Mexico so they can be close to their family and they can visit their nephew whenever they want. And being the frugal people that they are and not wanting to spend money on a broker, they decide to sell the boat by themselves, and hoping that this will give them the opportunity to find a buyer who will take care of the boat in the same way that they did, because they really loved that boat. Immediately after their ad was out, they just received a phone call from a 25-year-old who says, "Hello, I like your boat. I want to see it and maybe buy it." Now, it seemed a bit odd that a 25-year-old would afford to buy a almost $500,000 boat, but they decide to move forward. And this person tells them that he used to be a star child, and he used to act, and he starred in movies like Power Rangers, and this is how he acquired large amounts of money, and he could easily afford that boat. So the Hawks call their children and their family and their friends, and they tell them that now they have a buyer and they will be ready to sell the boat soon and buy this home that they wanted in Mexico. And they told them that they will get in touch with them after the sale is finalized. But now a week goes by and nobody has heard from Tom or Jackie, and everybody grows more and more worried by the day. They try to reach them by phone, but with no luck, and this is completely out of character for Tom and Jackie, who are always in contact with their family and with their friends. So they're very worried by this point. So Jim, Tom's brother, who is actually a retired police chief, is jumping in the car, drives to the harbor where they kept the boat, in the hopes that he will find them there, or at least he will find a lead that will take them to Tom and Jackie. So he gets to Newport Harbor, and there he meets one of his friends, and they see that the well-deserved is actually moored there. And he looks into the boat, and it's not in the state that Tom and Jackie would keep it, because it seems a bit off. There are things that are not arranged. There are equipment which are just left outside, and some towels hanging in the porthole. So this is not something that Tom and Jackie would do. They will not keep their boat like this. So he figures that they might have sold the boat, and the person who bought it is keeping it in this state. So he leaves his card with his number, and he leaves a note on it saying, "To whomever bought this boat, please give me a call." And immediately he gets a phone call. Is this young lady who says, "Yes, we indeed bought the boat from Tom and Jackie, and now we are the owners, and actually we want to talk to Tom and Jackie as well, because there are some things that we don't know about the boat, and we don't know how to operate it, so we would like to discuss with them. So please, if you find them, just give me a call back." This woman is Jennifer, and she's the wife of Skylar, the 25 years old that wanted to buy the boat. So this entire conversation strikes Jim as a bit suspicious, so he decides to call Patricia. Patricia is the one that was handling Tom's and Jackie's finances while they were out at sea, paying invoices and, just handling their accounts and stuff like that. And he asked, "Did you receive any transaction? Do you see any transaction in their account?" Because they just received $500,000 in cash from these people who said that they bought the boat from them, and the money should appear in their account. And Patricia says, no, there's no activity in their account. And this is even weirder. So Jim straight away decides to go to the police. So the police immediately recognize the signs that something is wrong. And they decide to look into the people that bought the boat from Tom and Jackie. And that is Skylar and Jennifer DeLeon. And they do find things on them immediately. It appears that Skylar had issues with the law previously, and he was actually convicted for burglary. Now, one detective goes out to the boat, and he finds this receipt from Target, and on it was bleach and trash bags and cleaning supplies. So, this is a bit odd. They say that if you commit a crime, this is exactly the kit you would want to have at hand in order to clean the scene. So they go to the store and they ask for the image footage from there. And they expect to see Skylar, because their suspicion at this point is that Skylar was somehow involved. But they don't see him. They actually see an older man, and they have no idea who that is. So they track down this person and they go and ask him, "Look, we found this receipt, and this is you buying these things, and we found them on the boat. So what's with this?" And this man says, "Oh yeah, this is the shopping that I purchased for Skylar and Jennifer. Jennifer is my daughter, and I helped them clean the boat, and this is what I used these supplies for." So next, the police decide to talk to the DeLeons, and when they question them, they both seem very concerned about Tom and Jackie, and they say, we bought this boat and it's legit. We have the documents to prove this. And the police ask them to produce the documents. And Skylar does just that. He provides legal documents certified by a notary with fingerprints and with everything that prove that indeed they bought legally that boat. But aside from the documents stating that they bought the boat, they also provide a power of attorney. And that seems extremely weird, because why would Tom and Jackie give them this kind of power over all their finances and possessions? This just didn't make any sense. But Skylar just goes on and says, oh, yeah, right, because they wanted to buy a house in Mexico, and because of that, they needed to have an account in Mexico and they needed to have money in Mexico. So this is what I wanted to help with, because I have all these connections, and I was going to help them to transfer their money in Mexico so they can make the purchase. But it's still a bit weird to the police. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, when Skylar is brought in for proper interrogation, he explains what his interaction with the Hawks was and how he found the ad in a boating magazine, and he just called and said, hello, I'm interested in your boat. Let's just meet up and see it. And they did exactly that. They went to a sea trial, which is actually like a driving test for boats. And they really liked the boat. So they shook hands and they met in a parking lot where the transaction took place. And this is where the notary was there and legalized all these activities. After they signed the documents, they handed over to Tom and Jackie a suitcase with $500,000, and they just went into their car and drove off. Now, the detective sense something is off here. The couple is living in her parents' garage, and it's like an improvised apartment in there. And they have one baby and another baby on the way because Jennifer is pregnant. And it seems a bit off that they would afford to pay this amount of money on a boat, because they said their plan is to move on that boat and live on it and to charter with it. So it would be their business. But it's a bit odd. Where do they have this amount of money? It's a lot of money, especially for 25 years old. And Skylar at first says, oh, I used to act. I'm a child star and I started in Power Rangers, and this is how I have all this money. But then he says, actually, you know that I'm convicted for a burglary. Actually, that was a deal gone wrong. And this is how I have the money. And the thing is that I cannot spend them any other way. So the plan was to buy this boat and have a legal business. And the police is like, you're just admitting to money laundering. So you'd figure that when somebody says a story like this, they would not make that up. Why would you admit to money laundering if it wouldn't be true? But still, the Hawks are nowhere to be found, and they just had this lead, the story about them getting into their car and just driving off. And they figure, if we do find the car, probably we will find also Tom and Jackie. So they now turn to media and they asked if they have seen this car. And somebody in Ensenada, Mexico, calls and says, I'm just looking at this car right now. And the police goes and checks in, and they see the car in this yard, and they go and knock on the door. And this person that opened the door is speaking Spanish, and he says, yeah, that car is my friend's car. He said, Tom and Jackie's car. Where are they? Oh no, Skylar and Jennifer's car. My friends Skylar and Jennifer. And at this point, it's very clear that something is off, and Jennifer and Skylar are somehow involved in it. And unfortunately, in this moment, the hopes that Tom and Jackie will be found alive are scattered. So they circle back to this power of attorney, which seemed extremely weird, and they see the name of Kathleen Harris, who is the notary that legalized the documents and oversaw the transaction. So they brought her for numerous interviews, and all the time she stuck to her story that indeed she was there Everybody signed, everybody agreeing to the selling, to the power of attorney, and everything was legit. And she really stuck to the story every time, and her account of events actually matched everybody else. Exactly what she said, everybody else, Jennifer and Skylar, said it as well. And her story seemed right, except for one thing. When she was asked to describe the Hawks, she described Tom to a T, like exactly how he looked. But when she described Jackie, she said her hair was brown and curly. But actually, Jackie has just changed her hairstyle right before they go on the boat, and her hair was short, spiky, and blonde, which didn't match to how Kathleen was describing her. This is enough to bring even more suspicions, and Skylar is brought in for money laundering, and he's taken into custody. They get a search warrant for their house, and just as they go in, they see a lot of Tom and Jackie's possession in there, including their camera. This is what they use to document their adventures. They love to videotape everything that they were doing. And as they look at it, they see that they had videotaped a lot of their actions. But at some point it would stop, and the Thanksgiving of the De Leons was there on the tape. In this point of the investigation, police knew Skylar was involved, but they didn't know to which extent, and they figured that he didn't work alone. So they started looking into Jennifer. Could it be that she knew what was going on, or was she clueless? And as they look into it, they see a footage of the two in the bank where they were trying to use this power of attorney and to drain the accounts of the Hawks. And Jennifer didn't look like she was surprised or she was not knowing what she was there for. She was smiling, she was laughing, she was very happy with what they were doing. Fortunately, they were unsuccessful to take any money from their accounts because the bank manager said, I know the Hawks and I'm not giving you any money. The detectives offered Jennifer a plea deal and immunity instead of your husband. But Jennifer says, no, my husband has nothing to do with this and I don't have anything to do with this. So they look into everybody else and everybody's story was exactly the same. So they see another name on the documents, Alonzo McChain. And they figured they need to interview this person. Alonzo McChain, 19 years old, was a guard in a jail, and this is actually how he met Skylar. Skylar was a prisoner, and Alonzo was a guard in the prison he was kept in. And he also witnessed the deal. And indeed, Alonzo breaks, and in return of a plea deal, he tells the entire story. And here is what he has to say. He said that Skylar came with this idea to make money and asked Alonzo to take part into this. And for some reason, Alonzo thought it was a good idea and he said, yeah, let's do it. So Skylar and Alonzo, along with another friend of Skylar's by his name of John F. Kennedy, who is said to be their accountant, but actually is a former inmate that Skylar met also in prison. They go to meet the Hawks and to have a sea trial. So they go out at sea to see how the boat is reacting and how it's working. And at some point, John is starting to become sick and he goes down below the deck, and Tom follows him because he's concerned about his well-being. And Jackie is up with Alonzo. Skylar is following Tom and John. At some point, as Jackie and Alonzo are staying there, she heard some noises downstairs and she's like, okay, what's going on there? And Alonzo is thinking, the things that we planned are happening down there and I need to take care of Jackie now. So what actually happened is that John faked being sick and Tom followed him downstairs and Skylar went right behind him and they both overpowered Tom and handcuffed him. In the same time, Alonzo, and this is exactly how they planned it, heard the noises. Jackie also heard the noises and Alonzo knew this was his cue and he needed to overpower Jackie. And this is exactly what he did. The two get handcuffed and placed back to back, and they have duct tape on their eyes and their mouth. And as they're sitting there, Tom is stroking Jackie's hand, and they're terrified, the both of them. They're crying, and probably they realize what's about to happen. So Skylar takes them one by one and takes them to sign the papers and to take their fingerprints. And he promised to let them go if they do exactly how he said. So giving him the boat and signing the power of attorney. So basically giving everything they had to Skylar. So they do sign, and then they are brought on the deck where they get tied with these ropes, and the boat is steering to the deepest point next to Catalina Island. And they now hear this sound, which they heard millions of times. It's the sound of the chains of the anchor, and it's being dragged towards their direction, and they hear it being dragged across the floor of the boat. And soon enough, they realize that these chains are being tied to their restraints. So Jackie is crying, and she's pleading with Skylar, how could you do this to us? We met you, we met your wife, we met your baby. Why are you doing this to us? And she's begging for her life, saying that she wants to see her grandchild. And all this time, Tom is stroking her hand, and he's saying that whatever happens, we are together. And right as this anchor is being thrown overboard, it's tied to them at this point, and it just drags them deep under the sea. Their bodies were unfortunately never discovered. Alonso also proceeds to tell the police how after all this happened, and it's a heartbreaking scene, John and Skylar just started fishing as they were returning to the harbor. And they were very calm and collected, like what they just did is the most normal thing in the world. This is heartbreaking. During the trial, the jury gave the same verdict, guilty. Jennifer is sentenced to life behind bars. Alonso is given 20 years due to his cooperation with the police. John F. Kennedy is given the capital punishment, and so does Skylar. But right before his sentence is given, Skylar is hit with a third count. It seems that 1 year before, Skylar was responsible for taking another man's life, and that is John Jarvis. He convinced this man that he had such a great deal and he can multiply his money. All they have to do is to drive across the border, and Jarvis needs to bring $50,000. Unfortunately for Jarvis, this was a false pretext, and right as they crossed the border, Skylar left Jarvis without his breath on the side of the road and took his car and money. That's all for today's episode. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate your support, and if you would like to get in touch with me or let me know how I'm doing, please use the comment section below, like, or hit the subscribe button. See you next time.